Hey guys, Drifter here. Welcome to Modern Warfare in Depth. In today's episode, we're going to be reviewing the Origin 12 shotgun. Yes, you can tell as we move later into the series, I'm getting increasingly desperate for topics, and while the Origin 12 is not an amazing weapon, it's actually not that bad, and it is kind of fun to use. I have to admit that I actually had a good time using the Origin 12 and making this in-depth episode, even if it was kind of challenging. The Origin rate of fire is 240 rounds per minute, which is kind of fast for a shotgun. It's not quite as fast as the 2-round burst of the R90, and it's a little bit behind the Breaky and some of those other like super powered weapons, but that's actually kind of fast. You can follow up shots very, very easily with this weapon. Headshots, unfortunately, with this weapon only yield 2% extra damage, so I see no reason whatsoever to aim for the head, especially considering that it's a spread weapon. You're less likely to hit the head, and it's better to get all 8 shots hitting the body than to get a 2% headshot damage. You miss one of those and you're already at a loss. Let's talk about the range of this weapon, because I think it's kind of a joke in the community, except for those of you that only play Shipment 24/7 because you're godless barbarians, but everybody knows that the range is kind of bad, and when I tested it, yes, those were the results I got. The base one-shot range on this weapon was 3.7 meters, which is effectively point blank. Instead of doing each individual attachment, I put every single range increasing attachment possible on this weapon, and what I got for it was a whopping 0.8 more meters. It didn't even go up 1 more meter, so you visually almost can't tell the difference between the base one-shot range and the maximum kitted one-shot range. So that's pretty rough, though I do want to point out, while the one-shot range is always going to be very short, nothing you can do can make this very long, it's kind of doable. More than once, I knew when somebody was within my insta-kill range, and I just one-tap them and move on to the next target. It definitely can one-shot kill, especially if you hit center mass. And interestingly, the one-shot range is almost identical to the R90. For whatever reason, when they nerfed the R90, they made its performance extremely similar to that of the Origin. So if you use the R90, if you know how long that one-shot range is, this one's almost exactly the same. Moving along, let's talk about the 2-shot ranges. That was something that a lot of you wanted to know about in the R90 episode, and I was reluctant to do because it's very random when you're dealing with spread weapons at long ranges. So I tested these under purely optimal perfect conditions, and I found that the base 2-tap range is 11 meters, which is much longer than I thought, and the base 2-tap range with all of the attachments on the weapon is 14 meters, which is a better improvement than the one-shot range when you stack all of the range attachments on the weapon, but it's not particularly crazy. I really, really want to stress that the 2-shot range potential is much longer than you think. This gun actually can shred people at impressive ranges if you're aiming down sights, if you've got the right attachments, if you're doing it right. But in practice, 3 to 4 shots isn't that uncommon. A lot of times you're not going to be in a perfect scenario, the enemy's going to be moving, you're probably not going to be aiming down sights too much with this weapon, so getting the long-range 2-shot kills is quite hard. I really want to stress to you guys that those numbers are not going to be representative of what you're going to get in-game, though it can happen if you're patient or a precise player. When it comes to the Origin and Slug rounds, it has the almost exact same performance and problems that the R90 does. The range is nearly identical, the rate of fire is nearly identical, and there's not really a reason to run Slugs on this weapon instead of the R90 when that one shoots faster and kills faster, and there's not really a reason to run Slugs in general because Slugs kind of come out off-center, sideways, or just not in the direction that you're aiming. Slugs kind of have a goofy hip-fire mechanic of their own, and they're not particularly accurate, and I do not enjoy using Slugs, so there's just no reason to run the Slug rounds on this weapon. Never, ever, ever will I tell you that's a good or even acceptable idea. However, aiming down sights on the Origin 12 can somewhat tighten your pellet spread. This is a really widespread gun. It's not like one of those, like, you know, you tighten them up into a slug kind of things like the 725. This one's not going to get super tight, but it can get tighter, and when it comes to the attachments that really matter, the one that improved the most is the F-Tac Impaler barrel. That is the best attachment for decreasing your pellet spread and for increasing your damage range on the weapon. It does both at the same time. It's much more effective than the choke or any of the laser attachments at that spread. But let's talk about the aim down sights times. This is where the weapon gets a little bit unexpectedly goofy. The base aim down sights time of the Origin 12 is 300 milliseconds, which is really slow for a shotgun. When you put this choke attachment on it, it's 330 milliseconds, which is 2 more frames. And when you put the precision barrel on it, 366, the wide shot is 266, and the impaler is another 366, so it doesn't actually hurt your ADS time any more than the precision, even though it does give you much, much better range. But the lesson you should take away from this slide is that almost all of the important attachments are going to slow down what is already a fairly slow weapon. When it comes to attachments that actually decrease your aim down sights time, the tack laser and no stock are both pretty good at 266. The dart stock, surprisingly, had the same impact as no stock, also at 266, so any of those are a fantastic choice. The Merc grip, not super effective. That's only 1 frame less, down at 283, and I was not able to measure any difference whatsoever with the stippled grip tape. In this group, however, I think the no stock is by far the best attachment because it increases your movement speed, which helps offset the massive movement speed penalty that you get for the 25 round drum mags. It's not a perfect offset. You're still going to be slower with those drum mags, but it does help and it's worth doing. And since you're probably going to be hip firing with the weapon, I don't think the recoil control is going to be a problem. When it comes to sprint out times, this is a very unusual weapon. So hear me out. The base sprint out time is very slow at 300 milliseconds. That is like ridiculously slow. If you add the 1 milliwatt laser, it is surprisingly effective at reducing your sprint out time down to 266 milliseconds, which is a pretty good improvement. And overall, this weapon works, this attachment I should say, works much better on shotguns than anything else. The 5 milliwatt laser gives you a massive, colossal improvement and down to 200 milliseconds and will tighten your spread, but the downside is, of course, people can see the green laser. Stippled didn't help very much. Stippled was only 1 frame of help, so it's a very, very weak kind of attachment. It's just like a purely bonus one almost for this weapon. However, I want to talk about maximum and minimum aim down sights times and minimum sprint out times. I decided to measure a maximum ADS on this. Like if you really kit the weapon for range, you can make it take up to half a second to aim down sights with, which is a very bad idea to do with this shotgun. The minimum ADS time, if you want to make this as snappy as you can, is 216 milliseconds, which isn't particularly fast. There's a lot of weapons faster than that, especially in the shotgun category. But interestingly, when you stack sprint out reducing attachments, you can get your minimum sprint out time down to 133 milliseconds, which is ridiculously fast. It's sort of like the parts are greater than the whole. If you go back and you look at the sprint out times, none of them, even just adding frames, should do this low, but when you stack all the attachments, it has a really, really fast sprint out time, which means it's obviously designed for hipfire use, right? When you're making your Origin 12 class, you are most rewarded for boosting sprint out time. Faster ADS isn't really essential on this weapon because you're not going to be ADSing that much on it. You're probably just going to be hipfire spamming people. And if you choose to use the Origin 12, then you have already decided that you don't want to go to heaven. You're not going to be a good person. You're not going to be a nice, gentlemanly player. If you're using the Origin 12, you are ready to fight dirty and tilt people and make everybody's life hell on shipment. You want to be a bad person, and you want to send them to shotgun spam hell, is how I would like to say it. The strategy behind this is very simple. You want to get close, and you want to spam hipfire at literally everything that moves. As long as you're not in hardcore, you won't kill your teammates, and just keep dumping rounds downstream. As a piece of advice, even though I'm going to recommend a relatively fast class that you can kit your weapon for so you can react faster, don't sprint if you don't have to. Sprinting up kind of to the corner that you expect people to be around and then slowing down and stopping and breaking out the gun and getting it ready for instant hipfire is a much more effective strategy. And you want to use this weapon not to take down one enemy, not to take down two enemies, not really to push with a shotgun, but instead to take on whole rooms full of enemies, to really, truly, honestly clean house and wipe out 10 people in one fell swoop. That is exactly what this gun is made for. It is a street sweeper more than anything else in this game. And the class I'm going to recommend is the one that I think works best and does exactly that. You want to put the F-Tac Impaler barrel on there. I know it slows it down, but it will increase your kill consistency at long ranges. It just makes the weapon more consistent. It decreases some of the randomness. The choke muzzle also helps with this. I run the 1 milliwatt laser. I love the 5 milliwatt. It makes it faster and sprint out and yada yada, but everybody sees my green laser and it gives me away. And especially after they get killed by the Origin 12 guy, they start looking for the green laser boy, so I kind of have to avoid that. Stippled grip I run for really lack of anything else important to put on this particular weapon. I guess I could put sleight of hands on there, but stippled grip does slightly help with the sprint out time, which is important, and it does something to the aim down sights time, and since I'm stacking other attachments, I'll do one that reduces it a little bit. And of course the 25 round mags, which is something that we haven't really talked about that much so far. The 25 round mags are awesome on this gun. They do slow you down a lot. They do slow your ADS speed down. It's not perfect, but mother of God, can you clean house with these? You can kill 10 or 15 people before you even need to reload. It makes you very comfortable with your ammo supply, reduces the pressure on your gameplay. It almost makes you feel like a juggernaut when you walk around just spamming people with this, and I would recommend them on every single Origin 12 class. Guys, that is all for this episode of In Depth. I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something useful. If you did, don't forget to like, favorite, and subscribe. Drifter out.